it could be any, like you say, any small town. That's part of what makes a small town so cool. That's why I feel like our book doesn't necessarily, it uses Aspen because it's, Aspen, but it could be any small town. It could be any small tourist town, really, you know. But
Mhm.
I feel like there's a connection that when you went through Coach D and you all did fly fishing as kids on your bike, riding up to Marine Bells and stuff like that, it there's a camaraderie that happens. There's a certain connection that you all have. The air that you smell in the right after it rains, and you're, like I played tennis at Island, and so every day at, like, I'd say probably 1 o'clock, a little cloud would come right over Tyhack, rain, and then
Right.
drift off, and we'd have to squeegee the courts in the summertime. It was so funny. We get out there and squeegee the courts and get out there and start playing, and it was like there's that smell right after the rain that gets embedded in your senses,
For sure. Well, here's a little bit of a different thing. Growing up in a small town like Aspen, you see and you speak to kids that grew up and graduated from a high school class that has 2,000 in the class,
Yeah.
1,500. It's like you don't have a chance to know everybody,
Yeah. Yeah.
And the town is so big. Aspen was so small. It was like this big.
Yeah.
And it was a small little sphere that everybody knew everybody. And everybody did a lot of the same things. So you could relate so easily, and still to this day, it's still kind of the same way. It's just a little bit bigger,
Yeah, I feel like it's interesting because the shift that Aspen has, there's the potential for it to still exist is there. But I feel like part of it is a perspective thing, and it could be completely there. I just feel like it has the people who aren't there all the time, if they appreciated and knew what they had a little more of, in other words, not just a weekend vacation place, but if they actually felt like that was part of their soul and contributed back to it like everybody else did, then
look, here's the deal. In my perspective,
Mhm.
so the locals, like junior golf, they won the state against all the other kids around the state. Junior golf is huge.
Right.
Take a look at the tennis over there. These kids in Aspen, the hockey program, they still have that small little family unity.
Yeah.
They're connected, but it's outside of the big Aspen space. These are families that kids still go to high school and grade school here in Aspen. They still have what we had.
Right.
Sure, the class is bigger, but they still have it.
Right. Is it that much bigger? I mean, is it?
Yeah. I think I went to the graduation this year because I had a friend that has a child that graduated. I think the graduating class had like 300.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, that is much bigger. Yeah.
Much bigger.
Yeah. Because I think my class was 75, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yours is probably a little smaller than that.
This year's like 400. But they have the same things that we had.
Yeah. It's funny. I with my wife, I met her here in Oregon in the animation crowd when I was starting to get into animation. And she grew up in the mountains here. Well, I wouldn't call it mountains compared to our mountains, but here they call them the mountains. And it's funny because I grew up with my motorcycle on mining roads, and she grew up riding a horse on logging roads. So we both grew up riding in the trees and doing all that stuff and getting up to the top of the hill and looking down and all that stuff. And so in a way, even though we were in two different places, our childhood's very similar in certain ways,
For sure.
Roots wise.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel like that's it's interesting. I mean, the journey we all take,
No.
So here's a good last question, I guess, would be, and you maybe sort of answered it, but knowing what you know now and seeing how you see the world now, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self that was coming right out of high school and going on to the U.S. ski team?
I wouldn't have listened. I was not capable of listening when I was 18.
Yeah. So you don't think you could do
You know, if I could have, I would have said, you know, more not 18, but when I was like in my 20s.
Yeah.
No, because I think I was more focused on being cool and being on the team. I didn't understand what it took to win. Sure, I'd placed sixth in the Olympics when I was 23, but I didn't know how to win yet, you know? And people say, what would you do? What would have you done differently if you could change anything? I wouldn't have changed a thing because I wouldn't be the person I am today if I would have changed anything.
I could answer.
I'd be somewhere else. I might not be in this house. I might not be connected with the things I'm connected with that I love so dearly. You know, do we wish that our kids would have turned out maybe a little bit differently, done a little bit something differently, or not getting a divorce, not having everything, you know, be, you know, imploded at one point or another? It's like, that's part of the progress. That's part of the learning curve. You know, sure, I didn't win the Olympic medal as a skier, but I won that as a fisherman.
Right.
You know, I got my redemption as a fisherman. But it all plays out one way or the other, and it's the way it's supposed to. So you know, the only thing that I would tell anybody, and when I do, you know, speak, it's like, look, everybody has a chance to be great at something. You just have to find your voice and chase that voice to the highest level possible. And if you really want to do well, whatever you do, you might not be ready to do well where you're at right now, but down the road you'll be ready.
Right.
It's just like that guy who owns the restaurant. He started out sweeping the floors. Be the best floor sweeper on the planet. Whatever you do, don't forget that dream. That dream is out there for everybody in one way or another. And if you lose track, if you lose connection with where you want to go, remember who you are and what that voice is asking you and demanding you to follow. Dance your dance. Everybody has their own dance. And don't be persuaded to go off tangent from the life that you want to live. And we all do that periodically.
Right.
We all get torn this way or torn that way. And we go down this road that sucks.
Yeah.
Right? We've been there.
Yeah.
We've all been influenced by people we shouldn't be influenced by.
Right.
Remember who you are. It's like the whole Lion King movie. Remember who you are. Remember who you want to be. And remember, be great at who you are right here in this position. Sure, we want to go there one day, but be great right here, right now.